Alright, we're fixing to cut up some meat for a Hayashi Rice. This is a top sirloin, kind of cheap. It's been in the freezer for about 30 minutes, so it's hard, not too hard, not frozen, but workable. So what you want to do is, as you can see, the grain goes this way, so we are going to take very thin cuts. It's all to your preference as how thick you want them. It's not gonna break down during the cooking process, so something with a little chew. So you just want to kind of angle cutting against the grain. You're not really wanting to push down on the knife, it's more of a sawing motion. So you get nice, even, thin cuts. Laura's standing over there because she doesn't know how to do this either. She just huffed at me and flipped me off, just so y'all know. This is what's going on in the kitchen. So you may have noticed the size of this. So it was a little less than a pound. And we should get 4 servings out of this. So when I'm cooking or preparing something, I'm always looking at how many servings, or if I can stretch it. So because this is a Hayashi rice, you can cut down the amount of meat, increase the amount of rice, which we'll get to a little later on how I prepare that and how it comes out, to either help with meal prepping or if you need to feed a larger amount of people. If you're going to do this, you need to be very careful, especially if your knives are sharp. That's why you need to put anything like this you're going to cut very thin in the freezer for 30 minutes. So we put all this in a bowl. So I am seasoning this with Weber Ultimate Garlic, just enough not to overpower the actual sauce later. So I'm looking at about that. And then I'm also seasoning it with garlic butter grill mates. I guess these are flavors that will accompany the rice, because the rice is going to be kind of a butter rice, butter garlic rice. Next couple of videos is going to be how I make rice and the 2 particular types of rice I make that you can either use for meal prepping or in advance getting it ready. Then we're going to have some videos on basic cuts like julienne, diced, cubed, and then how to prepare chicken different ways. So how to butterfly or bifurcate chicken for different meals or meal prepping, and serving size types. But I'll go into serving size more with the chicken, because it helps when you start to come to terms with like what a serving is, what constitutes an actual serving. But as for that, that's I'm just going to let that sit until later when I make rice. So let's talk about rice. I use a brand called Nishiki. This is a medium grain white rice. So the best way that I've found to cook rice is, so I'm making 2 cups. So I have water in a strainer in a bowl. So we're going to first by rinsing it. You need to rinse your rice. It doesn't matter if it says it's non-rinse. This plays 2 roles. See how the water is getting really white and diluted? We're going to keep doing this until it runs clean. And so for right now, I'm fixing to turn this faucet on, and you probably won't be able to hear me speak. And I'm using cold water for this. So I'm going to show you after 3 rinses. See how it's still cloudy? This rice is considered, you don't have to rinse it out, by the way. What that is starch and other debris that is naturally in the rice. So usually I do 3 times to where I'm rinsing it out. And then I'm going to take it and dump it out of the colander just into water. And I'm going to just cover it. So you can see that it's still a little hazy. If I mix it up, as long as it doesn't get hazier, that's about right. So see, it got hazier. So I'm going to pour this off. And now it's just about as clear as you're going to get it. So we're going to let this sit for 30 minutes. And because we do that, we're going to be able to use less water when we go to make the actual rice. But we'll come back to that. Okay, let's talk about cutting, specifically an onion and slicing an onion and garlic. This is what's going to go in the Hayashi rice that we're making later. So we're going to start off with this onion. So because I'm slicing this and not dicing it, I am using more of a chef's rectangular knife. If I was going to be dicing it, I would use a knife more accustomed to this for a thinner tip. So the first thing we'll do is cut off the 2 ends. cut it right in half. I'm going to peel off the outer layer. Because we are going to use a whole onion for the rice. You don't have to do it fast, you don't have to do it professionally, you just slowly take thin slices. They're going to essentially disappear in the gravy sauce anyway. Don't have to be perfect either. So when you get to this size, turn it sideways and just continue on. You can turn it back, just being careful of how much you have left so you don't cut yourself. Move on to the next one. So you're looking for a consistency like this. Just not too thin, but enough to break down and sear. So the garlic's different because it's so readily packed. If you're strong enough, you can squeeze it to squeeze off pieces. And then you'll just be able to tear them off once you get through the top layer. So normally for this dish, or any dish, I use 5 to 7 cloves. But because this is so small, I'm just going to use it all. It won't make that much difference. So once you have the cloves, they still have another layer on them, which can be difficult to deal with. So you can just smash it with your knife, and usually that will take care of the outer layer. And what you should have left should just look like pale skin. Doesn't matter that it gets crushed. We're going to be chopping it up either way. Just be careful when doing that. Your knife doesn't move around or somehow get cut. Sometimes with garlic, when it starts getting old, you get it to where it'll stick. If that's the case, you can just cut off the end that was attached, held it to the clove head. Now, if you have a food processor, it is easier to use it to dice garlic. We do not have that, so it'll be done by hand. And I will spare all of you, well, I'll show you first off, and do the rest later. So that is about as much as I'm going to dice it. Don't have to be that fine. It's just my preference. Anyway, we'll come back together when we go to produce the dish in its whole. So this is what we're looking for. It's starting to turn brown, nice and translucent. I'm going to make a hollow spot, and I'm going to add garlic. Now once I put this back on the heat, I'm not going to cook it longer than 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. So after a couple minutes, this is what we're going to be looking at, and then we're going to be adding 1200 milliliters of water, which is roughly 2.5 cups. And then we're going to set this on the eye to boil, and we're going to boil it for 20 minutes. So think about the rice. So this is our rice after it's been sitting for 30 minutes. As you can see, it's changed a lot. It's actually absorbed quite a lot of moisture. So what you're going to do is you will subtract 1/4 cup of water for cooking this. Because I have 2 cups of rice, I'll be looking at 2.5 cups of fluid when I go to cook it. Now with this rice, I'm going to be using just this. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of this inside the 2.5 cups of water to cook it with. So while the garlic and onions are cooking, this is the meat that we prepped earlier. After the 2.5 minutes of the garlic cooking, I'm going to be throwing this into the pan and cooking it till gray. And then we'll be adding water to boil. So I have a very simple Hamilton Beach rice cooker. It cooks up to 3 cups, I think, maybe 4. But this should work with any rice cooker. And I would suggest you use a rice cooker instead of trying to cook it on the stove. Okay, it will make your life far more delightful. And I say 2 tablespoons, but I'm not measuring, so, or teaspoons, so that's 2 teaspoons. I'm going to take a simple whisk and just by the way, this goes very well with meal preps. And I have some chicken I'm going to show you how to butterfly and bifurcate. Another video to help with meal prep stuff. So basically you could just make a whole bunch of rice and use something like this that you can get from Sam's Club. Make a bed of rice in it and then the chicken on top. And they're microwavable and dishwasher safe. And it's perfect for some of you who I know are doing meal prep. So once this is mixed to where I think it should be, or it looks well integrated, I'm going to shut it, turn it on, white rice setting, and done. It'll be done in 45 minutes. So after 20 minutes of boiling, this is what we have. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the Hayashi rice mix, it's broken into 4s, and we're going to add these. This has to be done off the heat, that's why I'm doing it over here on the counter. So we're just going to keep stirring this until they are dissolved. Should only take a minute or 2. As my dogs come over here and burp like grown men. But you are going to have to simmer this down because you want it like a gravy. But once it's all dissolved, you'll put it back on the heat and bring it to a gradual boil in order to simmer it. And I realize now that the camera is all kind of fogged over because I'm not paying any attention. So that's what we're going to be looking at once it's all dissolved. And like I said, we're fixing to put it back on the heat. And then we'll simmer it until it starts thickening. So our rice is done. So you can see that you should pull away nicely and not stick. And that is just about perfectly done. So what I'm going to do is pull this out. Move the rice cooker out of the way. Get our plate and our rice. So now when it comes to plating your Hayashi rice. So this rice is a very general purpose rice. You can add stuff to it. You can just eat it as is. Stuff like that. But for us, we're going to use about 2 scoops, 2.5. So we're really looking at about that much for a serving. And so our actual stew mixture is we're just going to take ladle it aside, not that much, and then just kind of pour a little of the gravy on top. And with that, we always eat with a spoon. And we are done. That is Hayashi rice. And the dogs are barking again for no reason because there's some random noise outside. But yeah, you can eat this as is. It's very good when it's left over. It has a long time to sit for the next day. Very good for meal prep, as long as you pour this over the rice inside the container so the rice does not dry out. But that's it. It's very simple. Hope you guys enjoy.